Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you've all had a good weekend. Those of you who've been wondering where all of the Elite Dangerous gameplay videos have gone over the last couple of months and have been patiently waiting for their return are not going to have too much longer to wait. Because today is the day that this goes live. This, as you can probably tell, is pre-alpha development footage of the Odyssey expansion for Elite Dangerous, and the alpha test goes live today. Now, a couple of disclaimers before everybody starts getting too excited. First, obviously, it's just an alpha test, and what you're looking at now, polished though it is pre-alpha footage. Secondly, in order to get into the alpha, you have to have either purchased a lifetime expansion pass or have bought the Elite Dangerous Odyssey Deluxe pre-order. If you fall into either of those two categories, or you're a YouTuber or podcaster who's managed to worm their way into the Elite Community Contributor program, or whatever the hell they're calling it, then the Odyssey Alpha will be available to download in your Elite Dangerous launcher. The first phase of the alpha, and I don't actually know how long the first phase is planned to continue for, but there are 4 phases of the alpha test before they get into the beta test. But the first phase is going to involve everybody in the alpha having a new commander with which to actually take part. It's going to be limited at first to all of the planets in just one star system in order to maximize player interaction. Whenever Phase 2 rolls out, they're going to open things up to a distance of 20 light years away from the initial starting system in the alpha. In Phase 3, that will be extended to 50 light years, and a whole bunch of other things are going to be introduced in each phase as well. And in Phase 4, they're going to take a snapshot of your existing player on the live server and allow those to be imported into the alpha, complete with all of the ships that you own, equipment, etc, etc, etc. There's a whole lot more than this going on in each of the alpha phases, and full details are on the Elite forums, and I'll put a link to that down below in the video description. You might have noticed that things are a bit quiet. There is a suspicious lack of sound going on in this background footage, and there's a good reason for that. Well, actually, it's not a good reason, but there is a reason. It turns out that FDev kind of screwed up, and they used some music that they didn't actually hold the copyright rights for. They realised their mistake right before this video was due to be made public, and they didn't have enough time to go back and completely redo the audio for the video, so all they were able to do was purchase a license to use the music that they had included in the video, but they couldn't whitelist all of their YouTubers, Twitch streamers and podcasters who were given access to the video in order to, make content about it. So I have to play the video without sound, otherwise I could end up with a copyright strike. So not a perfect solution, but the simplest one available. And I have to say, this is all looking very impressive. I mean, obviously, Frontier Developments aren't going to issue promotional material gathered from pre-alpha footage if it didn't look as good as they could possibly make it. So I'm pretty sure that even though this is pre-alpha footage, they've made sure it's as clean as it can possibly be. But as of today, 29th of March, I'm going to have the opportunity to take part in the alpha and see how it's come on since this pre-alpha development footage was put together. And I have high hopes. And I am looking forward to playing Elite again. And I know there are plenty of you out there who are looking forward to seeing Elite videos, and I've been very impatiently waiting for the alpha test to happen so I could do that. And with the Cyberpunk video series rapidly coming to an end, I'm going to be starting to wrap up Cyberpunk very, very soon. The very next Cyberpunk video will be showing you 1 or 2 of the possible endings to the game, all of which means that very, very soon a window is opening up in my weekly publishing schedule, right in time for the Elite Dangerous alpha test. Fancy that. So, taking a look at this footage, there are a lot more options available. I mean, obviously, the big thing is that you're able to get out of your ship and wander around the starport. And there are a lot more options available in the starport than were previously available just from the heads-up display in your ship when you were docked in the starport prior to the Odyssey expansion. One of the questions that I had was, are the same options still going to be available from the cockpit of your starship? Are you going to have to get out of the ship every time you dock at a station just in order to access the starport services. Because this all does look very impressive, but this is the kind of thing that is a novelty at first because it's new, but can rapidly become a pain in the arse when it takes you 5 times as long to do something that you could do in a heartbeat prior to the Odyssey expansion just by accessing the UI from within your cockpit. You can picture the sort of thing I mean. If you're in a rush and all you want to do is refuel, you don't necessarily want to have to get out of your starship, head to the refueling office, first find the refueling office, in order to pay to have your ship refueled. As things are now, it's just a single click from within the cockpit UI. Well, that's still going to be the case. The kind of options that are going to be available in the starport are going to be all of the station services that you can access from the cockpit anyway, plus a whole bunch of new features specific to Odyssey, and I think that actually makes a lot of sense and is a very good compromise, because if you just want to get your business done and get back into space as quickly as possible, you don't need to leave the cockpit. And if you don't have the Odyssey expansion, you're still going to need the same range of Starship services available from the cockpit UI, because you won't be able to leave the cockpit. But the kind of stuff that you will have to leave the cockpit for and wander around the starport are going to be Odyssey specific features. Features that will require the ability to wander around starports and the surface of thin atmosphere planets, the kind of stuff that Odyssey is putting into the game in the first place. So if you don't have Odyssey, you'll just carry on using your in-game UI in the same way that you always have. If you do have Odyssey, you won't have to leave the cockpit every time you dock at a station. If all you want to do is refuel and rearm, then you can just carry on doing that from the heads-up display. But if you're looking for missions and jobs that are going to lead you to the surface of planets, or if you're looking for contacts representing the various different factions that Odyssey is going to introduce into the game, then yeah, you're going to want to and need to leave the cockpit, stretch your legs, and go for a walk. So I hope to be bringing some Elite Dangerous Odyssey Alpha footage to you as soon as I'm able to. Oh, and if you want to see what you've just seen except with the original audio, check out Elite Dangerous's YouTube channel. I'm actually really looking forward to this because, I mean, I do enjoy playing Elite. It's a very, very good game. But I did start to kind of get bored of doing pretty much the same thing over and over and over. I mean, once I'd more or less finished the engineering grind, I really started to run out of interesting things to do. To be fair to Frontier Developments, in the run-up to the launch of the Odyssey Alpha in the months preceding today, they have stepped up the game with community goals, but even then, they started to get kind of samey after a while as well. So I'm very much looking forward to something completely new in Elite. I'm sure there are going to be bugs by the bucketful. That's the purpose of running an alpha test in the first place. And there's going to be all kinds of things that don't work quite as they're supposed to, and things that are going to get changed and end up not working by the end of the alpha the way they worked at the beginning of the alpha. But yeah, it's all part of the learning process. And it's all coming at a good time because I am really starting to kind of run out of things to play to keep me interested. I mentioned in last week's video that I was going to download and replay the old Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines game after the news that the publishers of the new Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines game had fired the entire development team. And so I did download it and reinstall it and started playing it again. And the tutorial at the beginning is incredibly tedious. But, well, yeah, fine. Once you get through the tutorial, the actual game, the story, the voice acting, the characters, everything about it is just as good as I remember it being. The game's graphics, on the other hand, I mean, you have to understand that this game was released in 2004. So, the graphics are 17 years old, and they look 17 years old. I mean, they're not absolutely terrible, but they're definitely not good. And I know people say graphics aren't everything. Dialogue, script, story, world setting, all that stuff is much, much more important. And if it was a first-person shooter, yes, I'd agree. Well, obviously you're not going to see much in the way of story, dialogue, character development and script in a first-person shooter, but I don't think that the graphics matter as much in a first-person shooter as they do in a role-playing game, because a role-playing game is all about the story. In a first or third-person shooter, good graphics help. They go a long way towards selling the game, but they're not as important as the gameplay loop. That's not really the case in a role-playing game, where the graphics are not the most important thing about it, but until you play a role-playing game that has bad or dated graphics, you don't really have an appreciation for just exactly how much good graphics and a good world environment go towards selling the whole gameplay experience. Obviously they're a complete waste of effort if the plot and the storyline and the characters and the dialogue and so on also isn't up to scratch, but the graphics and the world building, these are fairly important too, because the purpose of a role-playing game is to make you feel as if you're playing a role, and if you're constantly having your sense of immersion broken by absolutely atrocious textures and low polygon counts, that doesn't help. Nevertheless, I still do feel that the original Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines game was good enough in all other respects that you can get to the point where you stop noticing how terrible the graphics are. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only problem that I had, because of course the game was rushed out. It was released to fit a deadline by the publishers that it wasn't ready for, and it was basically broken beyond belief, and was only made playable by a series of cumulative community released patches that fixed most of the bugs in the storyline and made it possible to actually play the game. So of course the first thing that I did after downloading the base game from Steam and reinstalling it was find that community patch, and that's where I ran into another problem, because it turns out, and this may not be the case for everybody, depends on where you get the community patch from, but the site that I downloaded the community patch from, some cheeky little bugger had managed to sneak a virus into it. So that was fun. In other news this week, does anybody know the British comedian Jimmy Carr? I suspect many of you probably do, even if you're not British. Well, a while back, I booked tickets to go and see him at the Portsmouth Guildhall when he was doing his terribly funny tour of the UK. This week I got an email from the event organisers, and it reads this: "Hi there, this event has been rescheduled. The event organisers have been in touch to let us know that they've announced a new date for this show, which was originally due to take place on the 26th of April 2021. It will now be taking place on the 17th of December 2021. Okay, fair enough. Except the show was not originally supposed to take place on the 26th of April 2021. It was supposed to take place sometime in the middle of May 2020. In fact, I booked the tickets in August 2019. So, just think about this for a minute. Jimmy Carr is a very, very popular comedian. His shows are often sold out, months in advance. And that was the case when I went looking for tickets to see him in August 2 years ago. In August 2019, I saw that Jimmy Carr was appearing at the Portsmouth Guildhall in December 2019, so I thought, well, I'll go and get some tickets for that, and then they were all fully sold out. So I'm checking the Portsmouth Guildhall website to see when was the next opportunity for me to go and see Jimmy Carr, and it turned out to be May 2020. So in August 2019, I booked tickets to see Jimmy Carr in May 2020. Well, obviously by May 2020, that wasn't going to happen. We were right in the middle of the COVID lockdown. The organisers, very optimistically, because, the government said 3 months and we'll be out of this, the organisers had rescheduled the May 2020 show for August 2020, a mere 1 year after I booked the tickets. Obviously, that also didn't happen. They rescheduled it for December 2020. That didn't happen. They rescheduled it for the 26th of April 2021, and now I'm finding out that that is also not going to happen, and the show has now been rescheduled to the 17th of December 2021, more than 2 years after I originally booked the tickets. I'm just amazed I still have the tickets. I've been holding on to them for 1.5 years. I'll tell you what, this show had better be bloody well worth it. I'll tell you something else that happened this week that really pissed me off. So, for Christmas, I bought myself a little gift. It's probably easier if I just show it to you. I got this life-size figure of Baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. So, that was nice. Anyway, it didn't arrive in time for Christmas. It arrived sometime in January. I forget exactly when, but it turned up, it was delivered, it was perfect. End of story. Except not end of story. It was delivered by DHL courier service. Now, in DHL's favour, I'll say this for them. Unlike other courier services, when stuff gets imported and is subject to customs and taxes, they don't hold your goods hostage until you have paid the customs charges. They're quite unique, in my experience at least, amongst couriers in doing this. What they do is they cover the customs charges and they deliver your goods to you as quickly as they possibly can, and then they claim the customs charges back from you. So a couple of weeks after Baby Yoda had been delivered, I got in, I think it was a letter actually. Yes, it was a letter, I still have it, from DHL, asking for, I think it was £11 in customs charges. I thought, that doesn't seem like a lot, but, you know, that's what they're asking for. Fine, I'll go ahead and pay it. So anyway, I pay the customs charges, and I don't think any more of it. This week I received another letter from DHL, this time telling me that unless I paid the outstanding balance of £90 of customs charges that were still due, none of which, I hasten to remind you, they'd asked for in the first letter, or ever, and if I didn't pay up within 7 days of the date of this letter, they were going to take me to court. They told me all of this in a letter that they had sent to me by second-class post, which took 6 days to arrive, which means that by the time I got the letter, I had 1 day to pay up. So that was all kinds of fun. But this was only the start of my problems with DHL, because the second letter only contained a single reference number to identify the payment. So when I went to DHL's website, where in order to identify the payment they asked me to input account number, reference number, or waybill number, pick any two. Not only did I not know whether or not the number they provided me was an account number, an invoice number, or a waybill number, there was only one number, so I was unable to pay them on their own website using the information that they themselves had provided to me. So I tried calling them and couldn't get through. So I went into live chat, and after waiting only an hour and a half, I got through to somebody who was able to provide me with an account number that I could actually use on their website in conjunction with the reference number that I had, which it turned out was a waybill number. So those were the two pieces of information that I needed in order to actually pay off this outstanding customs charge that I hadn't known about until that very morning on their website, except their website crashed 5 times in a row every time I tried to make this payment. I mean, I'm trying, DHL. I really am trying. But, well, you didn't tell me that I needed to pay you this money, and you're making it as difficult as you possibly can for me to actually pay you this money. What I ended up doing was finding out what DHL's sort code and account number were from elsewhere on their website, and then going to my bank and arranging a bank transfer, using the account number that had been provided to me by their live chat service as a means of identifying the payment, so that hopefully, you know, DHL aren't just going, oh, where did this £90 come from? They can actually identify it with me, so that I don't next hear from DHL when they're summoning me to appear in court in order to pay the £90 that they never told me about until it was almost too late to do anything about it, and when I did try to do something about it, they proceeded to make it as difficult as humanly possible for me to pay the money that they were asking for. Other than that, I've had a fairly uneventful week. I tried having a go at Valheim, which has been doing incredibly well, and everybody's been raving about. And I'll give it credit where it's due. It does seem like a remarkably well-polished game, considering its microscopic development budget. But after a couple of hours, I found myself thinking, I've done all this before. It's basically the same as Rust, which was basically the same as Conan Exiles, and I kind of got bored with them after a few weeks, and I'm thinking that the same is going to start happening with Valheim. So the news that Elite Dangerous was going into alpha today couldn't have come at a better time. I'm very much looking forward to playing that, and who knows, I might see some of you there. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've all had a good weekend. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.